and welcome back to the Sportsnaut interview. And now we are joined by longtime New York Giants beat reporter and host of the Locked On Giants podcast, Patricia Traina. And Patricia, we love chatting with you. We've had you on before, and as always, we appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
I want to go through a bunch of different topics with you in regards to the New York Giants. Let's first start with the trade deadline. They were not active at all. I thought there was a couple players there on the roster who are on expiring contracts that they could look to move here, but they didn't. I'm curious to get your opinion on this. Now, there's been a lot of rumblings out there on the stability or the status, I should say, going forward with head coach Brian Daboll and GM Joe Schoen, whether or not they will be back. I know the owner has come out and said back in October that he didn't plan to make any changes, but we know things can change quickly in the NFL. But based on what you saw with their unwillingness to make a move, how much of that do you think was a little bit of self-preservation and the thought that weakening a 2-7 roster could make, bolstering their resume, so to speak, a little bit more challenging?
Yeah, I don't think the decision to keep those guys was, some people have said, well, it's to put the best product on the field. Well, they've been on the field for the 9 games played so far, and we all see what the record is. I think it was a matter of Joe Schoen did not want to give away those guys for nothing. Now, the market price, if you look at some of the other trades that were made for outside linebackers, pass rushers, I think they were going for 6th round picks, 7th round picks. You look at Azeez Ojulari, and I did this comparison. The edge rusher that the Broncos traded to the Cardinals, I think it was Baron Browning, a year older than Azeez Ojulari, but not as near many sacks as Ojulari has in his career. So, if you're Joe Schoen and you're going to make a move, you're going to want to get the most you can for that player. And if you don't, you just sit, you hold your water. And, chances are they won't re-sign Ojulari. He's probably going to get a nice payday because, it's never been about talent with him. It's always been his injury status and his health and all that stuff. But you just kind of ride it out at this point because, there's no guarantee you're going to get a comp pick. We saw that with Saquon. They're not getting a comp pick there. And you just, make the most of it, I guess, and just see what happens from there. The Giants, they're not giving up the ship, even though the record isn't very promising. And we'll just see how it plays out these last few weeks.
I alluded to some of those comments that John Mara made back in October about the coach and the GM. He said he does not anticipate letting the coach go or the GM during the season or anytime after the season as well. Based on what you know about John Mara and his tenure as owner, do you believe him?
I do. I think it would take something really, really out of left field for him to change his mind. And by that, I mean, you go back and you look at, and I know he said this about Ben McAdoo, he said it about Joe Judge, but what happened with both those guys? Ben McAdoo lost the locker room, and it was just really, a mess there at the end. And really, John Mara had no choice but to move on from Ben McAdoo. And then you look at Joe Judge, he had that, wild soliloquy that lasted for like 12 minutes in which he was basically pleading for his job and trying to say, hey, look, we're not a clown show like people think we are, like some other organizations. And that didn't go over very well either. So, I mean, Brian Daboll would have to lose the locker room or do something really, really bad, I think, for John Mara to change his mind. And I think the same thing can be said for Joe Schoen. Look, the Giants, I know they're in year 3 of this regime. You cannot keep changing the leadership every 2 years because every time you do, you're starting from square one. All right. So we've seen it, guys, new coaches come in, they want their guys in there, they want their systems in there. And now you got to start all over again. And, at this point, you have a foundation. Let Joe Schoen, let Brian Daboll continue to build it. If you think about it, the foundation is really not that bad. I mean, obviously, they've got to address quarterback. They've got to get some cornerback depth in here. Offensive line depth is good. Also, some additional defensive line stuff. But they otherwise have a pretty solid, I think, foundation with Andrew Thomas, with Dexter Lawrence, Bobby Okereke, Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy Jr. So just build on that and see what happens.
Yeah, you mentioned the foundation, and let's talk about that a little bit more. You mentioned two of the guys from this year's rookie class, Tracy and Neighbors. Overall, I would think this is something that's more of a positive for Joe Shane, and is that this year's rookie class, they're getting a lot of contributions for them. They're playing a lot of snaps, and at least early in the season, they were getting some production of them. But overall, your assessment of the rookie class?
Yeah, I mean, so far, based on, the 9 games or so played, this has been a solid class. It hasn't been perfect. No class ever is. But, Tyrone Tracy is proving to be a nice find. Malik Neighbors has come as advertised. Tyler Newman, the safety, the second round pick, he's pretty good. So they've got guys. Theo Johnson, the tight end, looks like he's getting a bigger and bigger role every week. Even Darius Mawaso, the 6th round pick, the last pick I think they made in this past year's draft, he's promising. So you've got a bunch of guys that I think are, up and comers. Now, obviously, you can't fully judge a draft class until they've been around for 3 years, but early returns on this class is it's probably been Joe Shane's best class to date.
Yeah, I would agree. He's done a pretty nice job there. And I want to ask you a little bit more about Malik Neighbors, sensational rookie, and he's missed 2 games. His numbers look real good. But is there any concern, do you think, with the comments that he made after the Commanders game last week, where he was kind of passive aggressive with his criticism of the play calling? And we all know from the HBO Hard Knocks series that ran over the summer, or the spring, I should say, that he's the type of player that he admitted he'll get frustrated when he doesn't feel like he's involved enough in the game plan. Now, I don't know how he could say that. I mean, he's second in targets right now in the NFL, and that was after missing 2 games. But just the level of concern with Neighbors, and maybe I don't want to use the word headache, but the issue that he could bring if things continue to kind of spiral out of control here with the offense.
I mean, for me, I was a little concerned with that because, I had flashbacks of Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah.
But you have to remember Malik Neighbors is what, 21 years old, I think he is.
Yeah.
So sometimes 21-year-olds say stupid things. They say things they shouldn't say. We did it probably when we were 21. I know I did at any rate. So that being said, look, Malik Neighbors is a very competitive young man. He wants to win. He wants to get the ball. He wants to do his part. If he sat there and just basically kicked back his heels and said, yeah, whatever, I don't care, whatever, they want to throw me the ball, they want to throw me the ball, they don't. I think I would be more concerned about that. I don't know that I would necessarily fault the guy for saying, look, I could do better. I want the ball to help. I want to do my part. But it is a very fine line where, you could interpret what he said as a, like you said, passive aggressive attack on the play calling and whatnot. But I think I would be maybe a little bit more concerned, and I'll probably draw heat for saying this, for him palling out with Jaden Daniels while the game was in progress. That I didn't particularly care for. It's like, do that before the game or after the game, but during the game, I get it. You guys are friends, but you got a job to do. So
Yeah, I did see that, and I wondered how Giants fans reacted to that. So I think that's a great point that you brought up there. Now, of course, I guess the elephant, not the elephant in the room, but the big subject with Giants fans is the future at quarterback. We all know that Daniel Jones has not played well this season. Giants fans also are aware of that big $23 million injury guarantee that is on his contract. And we have seen in the past with other teams and other quarterbacks who had large injury guarantees that at some point those teams decided to put the quarterback on the bench. Do you think it's only a matter of time before that happens with Daniel Jones? Or again, does it go back to that theory that I had earlier in our conversation that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane are not waving the white flag, and they believe that at this point, Daniel Jones is the quarterback that still gives them the best chance to win?
Well, I think that's what they believe. But that being said, I think if they lose to the Panthers this weekend, and you can't rule it out, even though the Giants are favored for like the first time, and I want to say over a year, maybe 2 years. I'm not sure. It's been so long. But if they lose to the Panthers, look, if you're going to make a quarterback change, you got the bye week coming up. Now's the time to do it. So this way you can tweak whatever you need to. And I go back to how last year, I don't know if you remember, but when Tyrod Taylor got hurt in the game and they had to put Tommy DeVito in there. And remember, they kept handing off the ball because the game plan and whatnot wasn't tailored for DeVito. So, you want to give yourself optimal time to get everything in place if you're going to make that change. And that, to me, if you lose to the Panthers, you make that change over the bye week, because you're not going to wait and until you come back and you've got Tampa Bay at home, and let's say they drop that one, which is a possibility. Now you've got a short work week because you got to go to Dallas on Thanksgiving. If you don't make it then when are you going to make it? So the other thing I think you have to look at, and maybe this is more so from the ownership side of things, Giant fans are becoming very dismayed with what they have seen as far as the product on the field. Now, to be fair to Daniel Jones, it's not all his fault. Let's be clear about that. There's plenty of issues with this team besides the quarterback play. But the quarterback is what we look to, because he's the one who, when push comes to shove, you need him to play above the X's and O's, and Daniel Jones has not done that. So if you're John Mara and you're having this conversation with Brian Daboll and with Joe Shane about the future of the position for this year, you say, look, my fan base, my customers, they're not happy. They were happy when we played Tommy DeVito last year. That gave us a little spark. We want to give the customers the best possible product. Why don't you guys consider, making a change? Now, whether that conversation takes place, whether that's how John Mara feels, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah.
But that's something certainly to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth noting that the two most recent, most notable times where these quarterbacks that I mentioned were put on the bench was Derek Carr with the Raiders and Russell Wilson when he was with the Broncos, and they were not put to the bench until week 17. So still a long ways to go until we get to that point in this season, but certainly something to keep an eye on if you're a Giants fan. And you mentioned the game with the Panthers. That is this week in Munich, Germany. So if the Giants should lose that game, it'll be a long flight back for this Giants team. But Patricia Traina, everybody, we thank you so much for the time. She covers the Giants for SI as well as the Locked On Giants podcast. Follow her work if you don't already. Patricia, we thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.